We recently saw the end to Mobile Suit Gundam Blooded Orphans. As some of you may remember, I recommended this series a few months ago. Now that it's ended, I feel it's probably a good time to go in depth and explain what is good and what is bad about this series. Mobile Suit Gundam Blooded Orphans is the story of a group of mercenary children. They're child soldiers who've been abandoned by those who own them or employ them, and they set out on their own to form Taka-Otaku, a mercenary company in its own right. From here they embark on their first major mission, one which will cause intense ramifications throughout the known spheres of humanity. Personally, I think this series is a bit too different and a bit too high quality to really feel like a Gundam series. In no way is this a criticism, but this series felt very different from previous shows in the franchise. But how exactly is it so different? Let's start with the most obvious thing, the technology. Previous Gundam series almost always have a high use of lasers, lightsabers, very silly high sci-fi weapons. A lot of the time they use psychically projected laser cannons and the like. Lots of very silly, very over-the-top weaponry. Which is great in a Universal Century show, but wouldn't really fit here. Here there's a use of blades and bludgeoning, a use of shells and actual bullets. Everything is a lot more down to earth, a lot more visceral. Mechas don't feel like they're wearing flares. They don't feel overly flashy, but they are incredibly detailed. They have clearly signposted armor. If you look at the Gundam Barbatos, it's mostly white with occasional detailing. Compare this to older Gundam series with their bright primary colors. If you look at a lot of them, they're mostly blue and red, with the occasional white section. The action here is easier to follow. It's very visceral. There aren't that many gimmicky weapons. The weapons do get more complicated, but they aren't over the top. They almost make sense within the context. The space battles also seem to make a lot more sense. They are using boarding parties as opposed to laser fire from long distances. There's an abundance of mechas which aren't humanoid, such as the mobile workers, and a lot of people simply taking up arms and fighting. The space cruiser stays in orbit when they get to Earth, as opposed to flying around with them. This semi-realistic approach is reflected also in the characters. Unusually for a Gundam franchise, there's a lot of character development on show here. Considering the huge cast of characters, they all have an arc. They all appear relevant. Characters learn, they grow, they have self-doubt. Bad things happen to them, and they try to act on it. They have actual ethical quandaries, as opposed to simply acting out and getting really angsty halfway through the series. The series isn't smattered with the enormous death toll that there used to be in some series. When someone dies in this show, they mean it. Main characters who are killed off actually have an impact. You care about the characters because you know the characters. This isn't always the case in anime. A lot of the time writers are keen to just kill off characters because there's a lull in the action. Here it happens in the midst of battle out of nowhere and it's painful. It hits you right where it hurts. The character designs are also good and memorable. You're keeping track of people's development because you aren't forgetting any. There aren't that many super generic designs here. They aren't overly elaborate, but you can tell who everyone is. There is still a focus on our two main protagonists, but there's still a focus on everyone else. It is in fact some of these characters though, which I feel bring the show down a bit. Partway through the series we encounter space pirates, whose designs are all outlandish and weird, and whose characterization is just plain stupid. These feel really out of place when you have these down-to-earth characters elsewhere in the series. Our main antagonists, if you can call them that, are really sympathetic and are drawn into actions which aren't fantastic, but you see how they're drawn into them. The great shadowy figure behind it all is intriguing to say the least, but you also have these ridiculous throwaway characters who feel out of place and like they shouldn't really have been in the anime to begin with. The entire central area of the anime involving the space pirates seems like it's only there so that Taka-Dan can gain some new mechs. Overall, however, I feel this anime is very strong and it deals with very real issues. It makes early Real Robo shows, like the original Gundam, seem like they were written by Go Nagai. It deals with child soldiers, it deals with slavery, it deals with rising above the station that the authorities have told you you're in. It has revolutions with the proletariat. It considers the role of the heads of revolutions, whether or not you need a leader or a martyr. It deals with the fact that some of these actions aren't necessarily for the greater good and may in fact be being orchestrated by others. And at the centre of it is Tekadan, who are rising above their status as child soldiers or slaves and trying to make a life for themselves. You follow them as they create their own family, and they try to act in the best interests of it. We see Mika trying to improve himself by learning to read and write. It also deals with even more challenging things, like the idea of human augmentation, and the horrors of what might be possible when you begin to lose your humanity. As the soldiers of Tekadan begin to lose their humanity, their enemies begin to go for more and more extreme measures and in turn lose theirs, whether literally or figuratively. In Universal Century Gundam shows, the new type is a metaphor for how the young have new ideas and new ways of thinking, and have more to contribute to society. Psychic space noids are an idea almost belonging in the X-Men. However, the human augmentation and cybernetic enhancements that are undertaken in this show demonstrate the lengths that people will go to, losing their humanity and losing everything that makes them who they are. Yes, they give you an edge in battle, but at what real cost? When cybernetic enhancements and human obsession are taken to their extremes, all of a character's humanity is gone and they come out as something completely different. And in the end, what makes the mark of the greater character is coming out of the other end of the battle and still maintaining that you are a person, that you are human, as opposed to becoming an empty shell. Mobile Suit Gundam Blooded Orphans deals with all of these themes and more, and manages to do it with a true sincerity, not often seen within anime. A lot of the time these themes are done cheaply, but this show manages to do it successfully. It manages to do it with a high level of quality, and manages to be an exciting and entertaining show at the same time. This is exceptional, even within the already exceptional canon that is the Mobile Suit Gundam franchise. To say the least, I'm very pleased to hear that later on this year there will be a second season. It feels like this series was only the beginning, and that much greater and much bigger things are coming. Raise your flag, koe no kagiri, koe no kagiri, koe no kagiri sakende. Kito itsuka doko ka, tadoritsuku to Shinjite. Come on and raise your flag, so just raise your flag.